What's up, everybody? It's Soren Baker.
Amir, Rahimi.
And today on The Great Debaters, man, some Showbiz and A.G. All right, Amir, so we're back here on The Great Debaters. If you haven't already, please make sure you hit that subscribe button and share our content. Help us spread the word to get Unique Access up there to the #1 spot in the game. Now, today, Amir, we're going to Showbiz and A.G. Phenomenal group, duo, a lot of great material. 1992's Runaway Slave. How and why did you get into this album?
D.I.T.C.
It's good reasons.
One of the first rappers I'd heard after, my initial stuff with N.W.A. and Wu-Tang and Outkast and people like that. Big L was one of the first albums that I'd heard after that, And then I remember I first heard it and I was just blown away at the time. I was like in middle school. I loved the punchlines. The punchlines were something that I would always put, back when like MySpace was out and stuff like that, you'd always quote rappers or quote something sick that you thought, and Big L was one of those folks who is also on the album. But that's kind of what got me into D.I.T.C. and obviously Showbiz and A.G. So then I eventually, years later, heard this album. And that's how I got into it. And let's go ahead and get into my first pick.
Let's do it.
So, first pick is going to be the first track, and that is Still Diggin'. And I think it's an interesting title because, obviously we had their release prior, which was the Soul Clap single, Soul Clap / Party Groove single. But you can also call them the EP because they're like quite a few songs on it that just weren't those two tracks, right? It also had the song Diggin' in the Crates. So I feel like Diggin' or Still Diggin' is, kind of like a part 2 to Diggin' in the Crates, right? Because I don't know when they decided to stick with that title for their larger collective, D.I.T.C., but maybe they just thought it would stick or whatever, I don't know. But it's cool because you got Show and A.G. on here, you have Diamond D on here, and it's an awesome song. When I think of D.I.T.C. instrumentals and just something that puts me, that makes me just think of Diggin' in the Crates crew, it's a beat like this. This reminds me a lot of some of the production that we also got on Lifestyles of the Poor and Dangerous, as well as other things from this collective, and even like Buck Wild and other producers. And Still Diggin' I love. Diamond D kicks off the album, which I like his verse. I like how he says "holy mackerel" when he said that. I'm like, oh, holy mackerel. I don't know how often rappers use that phrase, so I like that. I just love the beat. Still Diggin' in the Crates and the chorus. Just a really, really good way to start off the album. I don't know. Well, actually, must have been pretty intentional. Starting off, talking about your crew, talking about, these things, and then showing A.G. just doing it well correct. And there are some dope features on this album for sure, and Diamond D being one of them. So I just think this is a solid way to start off the album. It's my first pick.
That's not one of my picks, but it's one of, to me, the best songs. This Runaway Slave album, I'd say probably has 6 or 7 that I would argue could be in my top 3. Still Diggin's one of them for sure, but it's not. So my first pick, I'm going to go with Bounce to This. Now this one I like for a lot of reasons, but let's start sonically. One, the production is very unusual for the rest of Runaway Slave, I would say, which I appreciate. The beat is very, very different and very spare and has a little bit of a different type of bounce and swing to it than much of the rest of the album. Then on top of that, Drez is on it. And Drez being on it kind of gets it, that's a Native Tongues thing as opposed to a Diggin' in the Crates thing, which I think added a different level of excitement. It was, as I was listening to it back in real time when I first got this album in 92, I didn't look at the credits or anything, and I just heard Drez on it, and Drez, who I thought was one of the best rappers at the time, I was like, dude, this is amazing. I never would have thought of him being on here. It's unexpected. It's, early in the album, but it's not one of the first 1 or 2 songs. And the flow was so great from Drez and his style, and he, like you said, with Diamond D and Holy Mackerel, Drez has a very especially during this time, a very unorthodox flow, style, vocabulary, all the things that made him great, and the way he approaches things, I think translates to Bounce to this. So for all those reasons, I've always loved this song. I always thought it was a standout selection and one of those that I don't think gets discussed that often, but I just think it's brilliant. And how Drez's verse is super long, but then A.G comes in at the end and does a little bit like kind of a bridge, but then they get to the chorus, then A.G comes on, and then they're talking. It's just, to me, the whole thing of it is just great. And A.G, I think, does a great job and has his own verse and different types of stuff, but Drez, to me, is the star of the show, and I think it's immaculate. So that's my first pick. Anything you want to add with Bounce to this?
I think, it's interesting they chose it for a single. I think it's a really good song. They chose for a single, and I think a lot of that is partly because of the chorus. Maybe they thought it would do well in shows. You gotta bounce it. Like, I can picture that doing well, like, in the early 90s to even mid-90s. Maybe people were going hard, I don't know, in New York or wherever else they toured and etc. But I can totally picture this, like, going off in one of those clubs. So I thought that was interesting that this was a single, partially because of that chorus and that reasoning. Great song, not in my top 3, but it's really good.
Yes.
My second pick is the one after Still Diggin' and before Bounce of This. Okay, my memory is not failing me. And that would be Fat Pockets, which is also a single. And that song is awesome. Actually, at first, when I first heard it, I wasn't crazy about the chorus, where they're just sampling their own. And that's actually another thing, right? So when I first heard this album, this was the first thing in their discography that I'd heard.
Oh, okay.
Because I didn't know that Soul Clap. When I saw Soul Clap, I thought it was just the single. I didn't know it was also an EP.
Right.
So when I saw it was an EP, I was like, wait, oh shoot, because I had I saw Soul Clap was on here, but then I went on Discogs, and I was like, wait, why are there 2 different Soul Claps? And I clicked them. One of them was the EP, and one of them was just the single. I was like, okay, well, there you go. And then I got the EP, and then I heard it literally like a week later. I just bought it like quickly, and then I listened to it later. So then I heard the song Diggin' in the Crates, which I already had mentioned. And Diggin' in the Crates, from that song is where you hear the sample that they flip that was on their EP, where he says, I like my pockets fat and not flat. And that's what I like. So the chorus, that's why it's always so crucial to listen to these albums and releases in order. Otherwise, you'll miss certain things like that. So thankfully, I caught it and then listened to it, which that EP is very good, and I highly encourage you guys to listen to it, especially since some of that is added to this album. So that, at first, I wasn't crazy about that. It's the chorus. I thought it was kind of slow, doesn't really work. And then after a couple more listens, I was like, oh, this is actually really good.
It's amazing.
So sometimes I'm like, I got to listen to things a few times. So I like that a lot. The subject matter's funny. Basically saying how, obviously, they want money in their pockets. They don't want to give it to anyone, even for the handicaps or whatever. Like, give my you can go to the store, but bring my change, stuff like that. It's just funny, right? And then also the way they end the song, where it just ends, the way that the instrumental ends, I like a lot. I think the production is carefully thought out on a lot of these songs, and Show does a great job. In particular, obviously there's some other producers too. Diamond D once again. So very well produced song, really good. I understand the appeal, and A.G also comes correct, obviously. So that's going to be my second pick.
That's not one of my picks, but it's one of those 6 or 7 that would be if we did 6 or 7, because all those things Amir's mentioning, and I just think Showbiz bringing in all these different elements and samples and references and everything throughout the song, to me, is spectacular. But I'm going to do Soul Clap, the short version, is still, like, I just love this version of the song, and because I like the EP so much, I enjoyed the fact that they put it on Runaway Slave, and I enjoyed the fact they put it at the end of the album. Yep. So it wasn't something toward the beginning where they're like, oh, they're just rehashing it. And it is a different version, and it has like the Public Enemy, Terminator X to the Edge of Panic, that type of thing. The sound of it I really liked, and I thought A.G on there did a good job, as he did throughout the EP and the song Soul Clap. He doesn't he and Showbiz, they leave the room in the song. So there's large stretches of instrumental, which I like. The beat is phenomenal. Diamond D worked on that with Showbiz. So, yes, Soul Clap we had heard. Soul Clap had been out. But the inclusion here I thought was excellent. And it's one of my favorite songs of Showbiz and A.G. in all the different forms, all the different mixes and remixes, original version, all that. Because I just think it sounds good and feels good. So, that's my second pick. Anything you want to add before we get to the third pick?
I was going to say, no, it's very interesting because when I first heard this album, and then that was before I knew the Soul Clap EP, when I got the Soul Clap EP, it's like this album actually really ends at track 12 with the Sounds of the Lambs, even though they had the remix earlier in the album. But it ends with Sounds of the Lambs, and then you get 4 tracks that are from that EP.
Right.
Obviously, it doesn't have everything from the EP, but that's interesting. They kind of just added half that EP onto here. So it's very interesting. Soul Clap, great song. So yeah, let's go ahead and get into my last pick, and this is possibly my favorite song, and this is Represent. And it's interesting too. I don't remember which track it starts with, but there's a certain point in the album where it kind of starts where you hear like little interludes / intros to the songs. That it's very weird because I remember when I was hearing this album, usually when I listen to an album, I listen to it obviously in full. I want to go in one go, but I try not to look at the track names the first go around because I want to see how well the things segue. So I don't want to know like exactly when a song ends and starts. I want to see if I can kind of guess it. This album tricked me a little bit because of those little intros and interludes. So I feel like a cassette listener, they probably had a lot of trouble like finding out when songs started. Because like in some songs you hear like Freddie Fox, right? You hear like Freddie Fox, and it's like Freddie Fox, like he's not even rapping, he's just talking. So I just like got confused. So same thing with Represent. I got a little confused. The beat comes in, and then it's Big L. And remember, I got into D.I.T.C because of Big L, because that was the first sound that I'd heard. So when I heard this, I try not to spoil things for myself. So when I heard this, the first time I heard this song was when I heard this whole album.
Me too.
So I heard when he says, "You on the mic is Big L," and I was like, "Oh shit, that's from MVP." And then he's like, and then he references the Graveyard. I'm like, "Oh, that's from the Graveyard." And then the beat is so hard. Like this is a beat that Big L will mash, and he mashed it. And he just murdered it. And I didn't rewind it that instant because I was like, let me just play this whole thing in full. But best believe the second time I rewound it as soon as his verse finished. And then we got D.Sean, which D.Sean, he also had a dope verse. And I'm not sure how much like we heard of D.Sean after. He's not a name I really remember, so maybe Soren can elaborate on that. I don't really know much about D.Sean, but I would have liked to, just from this performance.
No, I don't know much about him either. I was always expecting, hoping, wishing to get more of his stuff because, I do think that's also one of my third pick, so we'll get to that, but continue, but I'll have lots to say.
D.Sean did a good job, man. I mean, so we get that, and then it's like, damn, you thought this couldn't get better. We get Lord Finesse coming in, and Lord Finesse, I like Lord Finesse a lot as a rapper and producer too. And he always has like some funny rhymes like about, beating your thing right. I'm like, okay, but his verse outside of that is good. That was just a ridiculous line, hilarious. Lord Finesse always drops some funny ones. But you get Lord Finesse on there, which I'm like, I always love hearing Lord Finesse. And something about Lord Finesse's voice to me is very dope. So, I really like his voice. And then we get A.G. And A.G. also does great. And it's just like one of the longer songs of the album. It's definitely at least 5 minutes long. So just such a great beat. Just such a great cast on the beat. And it's just so well done. And it's such a banger. So this is probably, I would say, my favorite song on the album. And that's my last pick.
As mentioned, represents my third pick. So, oh boy, this song, I just remember when I first heard it, I never stopped to rewound stuff as I'm listening. And I remember thinking, especially with Big L and Lord Finesse in particular, I was just like, dude, what did they say? Like, how did they say that? What is it? Like, what? But I kept thinking that throughout the song. And then D-Sean and A.G, I think, do great jobs too. It's just Lord Finesse and Big L in particular are just on a different level on the song. Showbiz, I think, production-wise, is excellent. And, you know, I do think it's just one of those things where people, I think, overlook Showbiz as a rapper and as a producer. He's super talented. Diamond D and Lord Finesse, of course, people look to for both of those things, but Showbiz, I think, doesn't get enough shine, and I'm glad Amir and I are doing this because Showbiz, I think, is an unheralded rap star and somebody that doesn't get enough attention. So I'm glad we're shining a little light on him for this, and just being able to rap so well, but then bring in the Dresses, bring in the Diamond D's, bring in the Big L's, the Lord Finesses, etc., into this cohesive project. And then you got A.G on the other songs doing a little more political stuff than D.I.T.C is typically known for, social commentary. And then, like Amir and I have been saying, they're bringing in a lot of the stuff from the Soul Clap EP, but making it so different and building on it so much that it's definitely a cohesive project that stands on its own, even when you factor in those other songs. So, I don't know, man. Runaway Slave is one of those projects I remember when it came out and I was learning more about how the music industry works and stuff. I thought it was going to be a big record, and it didn't end up, you know, going gold or platinum or any of these other things like a lot of other records were in 1992. But everyone that I knew in Maryland and that heard it loved it. So I was glad that it wasn't one of those albums where I'd tell my friends about it or play it for them or something, and they'd be like, oh man, I never heard this. It was like a few of them knew it and loved it too. So that was exciting. And I'm glad Amir's like that too. So
that's good, man.
You guys got my 3 picks. You got Amir's 3 picks. As always, hit us up in the comment section. Let us know what you think of Runaway Slave. If you got the same as us or different, please let us know. We enjoy reading and hearing and thinking about what you guys say as well. I'm Soren Baker.
Amir Rahimi.
Great debaters, y'all. Shout out Showbiz A.G and Diamond D in particular, and all the great guests on the project. Unique Access Entertainment. Check you next time.